Yeah. So, hello everyone. Welcome to another session of Go PBL All Things Go. And well, we try to, just be optimistic. So, like, there are something that we can keep it here. But today's session, we are going to set its agenda, uh, and but looking into what we have done in a couple of weeks ago, I think we can move forward with this project that we are going to discuss about. So allow me to open a new page for today's meeting. And if anyone have any questions or any agenda or anything that they would love to talk about or discuss about, surely Cardano slash Go related, but maybe if other things they are working and they need guidance, sure, feel free to open your mic or paste it in the chat. So let me just duplicate this guy and come in. Today is 16th. Let's see in progress. And the Andami indexer, I think we can follow this up. And this, well, it can be here. But does anyone have any other question or any other agenda that they would love to talk about? We can talk about other Go tools and digging deeper or testing them out. We can talk about some issue they are facing and you don't know how to approach that or tackle that regards to getting information from blockchain or sending information to blockchain or I don't know, signing something or some CIP thing that you don't get, like what should you do with that in your, I don't know, transaction or something. Feel free. And also uh, if no, let me just share this as well. There is the website, but I can share it. You can see it in the chat. So, yeah, feel free to tell me anything that you want to talk about. Meanwhile, I would love to go and showcase some of the things that I've been working regards to Indexer. So I used several guidance that Chris provided. One of them was using the database. So I've added, I've been using this database so far and actually trying to learn about it most of the time. I've spent the time I was learning about this code, how things work, how the SQLite is storing information, how the Badger is storing information, and based on the thing that you guys saw, like we want to store addresses and then, kind of returning UTXO or transaction based on, or filtering the whole chain or transaction or blocks based on those addresses. I went to add and customize this code. And instead of like adding, I mean, I wanted to add, but not only I faced some independency issues, and then I decided to just copy whole things here, and then slowly, using the actual code base. Uh, so one thing I've added was the adding the new address to the database. Like this was get UTXO by address and where is that? But in the type also, well, not in type, in metadata.
We already have a UTXO address.
But it wasn't really that much probably not working, so I had to change it to be honest. And I had to have these two add address and get address function inside the metadata store, and then use that to, feed that get UTXO by address and stuff. To be honest, I'm not really that much expert to recognize the errors. I just use the AI to translate the issues to me. And in fact, I've also, like, I think 2 years ago, I installed an extension. I don't know if you guys seen that, called Roo Code. And this thing can do many things for you. It's kind of, it basically is an agent, AI agent. I mean, you guys can research about it. There are videos. Basically, you give it some prompts or some tasks, and then it will break it down to subtasks and start to do, changing your code, reading many things. In fact, actually, we can test it if you guys want to see it. But the thing is, yeah, I was using that, and then this handler for the address and the whole uh, function about the adding address.
Why,
So
why, I'm sorry, I'm completely lost. Why are you adding individual addresses to the database separately? Like
because
addresses don't do anything without being attached to a transaction or
no, no, no. The thing is, we have a particular set of addresses. Like, let me bring that here. Yeah, so is that here, right? Okay. Uh, we want to store UTXOs, but based on addresses, and those addresses are user addresses, and
okay,
also,
let me just stop you. Stop you. I'm going to stop you immediately. You're confusing concerns here, right? Like at a given address, that means that's like pre-filtering of the data that's coming in as a stream. Storing UTXOs, you don't have to store it by address. In other words, address does not have to be your index, your primary index, right? Like if you look at our current UTXO primary index, we already have a get UTXOs by address. And it works by you giving it an address and it returns all of the UTXOs from the UTXO table. Like it's already there. And it searches by searching on the addresses that are on the UTXOs. So the point is the table already supports more than one address, any number of addresses, right? Because it has to. And we already have the query for it. So that's where I was like, I'm not following at all why you're individually storing addresses and I guess what you were adding to them.
I'm storing the addresses of the user whom use the platform. And those addresses has UTXOs and datums, and they are scattered in several smart contracts as well. And also there are addresses of smart contracts that they have UTXO attached to those, I mean, smart contract addresses. So those addresses needs to be stored somewhere, and the attach and the history of the,
But Mix, why do we need the users' addresses? I thought we were indexing like instances of course and project validators.
indeed. I'll also have added that already in the config file. Here it is I mean, this is the Atlas API config file. It's added here. So we follow these smart contracts and, of course, the policy IDs, which I haven't started to write the filter about them, by the way. But the thing is, about that transaction history, the thing came to my mind is, do we want to store that history or not? So storing history, like, sure, I query, I filter out those UTXOs, and I want to store them and assign them to a particular address. It's like particular user. Let's say this is just a username instead of let's not call it address, a username.
Will
And
you
the
go
activity of users. Go ahead, sorry. go ahead, Chris.
No, and go.
So the history of activity of users on-chain would be stored under that username or AKA wallet address. That's separate. Sure. I mean, this is on-dummy index. This is the thing that we are going to store. I mean, the querying. This is the same thing. I mean, I'm not saying that we are not following that.
Okay,
Uh,
I'm just gonna. Can you go look at the actual UTXO model? It has addresses in them. Every UTXO stores an address. So this is what I'm trying to understand is it has the credential in the model. What the heck?
Here, did I?
No, in the actual model. Sorry, in the models. Models. You didn't open models.
Was here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, look at
TX. Oh,
UTXO.
yeah.
So every UTXO has the address, right? Like the payment key
Yeah.
with an index. So you can already query by address. That's why
So,
I was not
so
understanding.
this is that maybe I'm not understanding. I mean, not maybe. I'm sure that I'm not
Okay.
understanding because to be honest, I'm learning. But this is the learning path.
Okay.
The thing is, I'm trying to figure it out, Chris, is I have bunch of UTXO, let's say 15 UTXO from different blocks, and these belongs to one person. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I want to store these 15 UTXOs and assign them to that particular address so that
Then
if,
you have stop. Let me just stop.
okay,
Then you have 15 UTXOs in the UTXO table that all happen to have the same payment key in the payment key field. You don't have to make the primary key the address. In fact, you can't make the primary key the address in the database. It needs to be like an integer. So you'll see we don't use an address as a I keep saying primary key, but that's not really what I mean. As an index, as a primary index in the database, it is a secondary index in the database that we query against, right? So you can query against any field within a table, right? Like you don't have to query from a specific field. So you can query UTXOs by address, you can query them by added slot, deleted slot, or you could query them by the transaction by output index and ID, right? Because those are the indexes that we have that make it easy. And we already have queries for all that stuff. So I'd be like, at this point, we're just talking like SQL, right?
yeah.
So yeah, my I guess what I was getting at is I really didn't understand why we were creating a specific address thing because addresses are going to have a fairly, yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish is kind of what I was getting at.
So the Andami indexer in my mind is a database which only had UTXO related to Andamia. And those UTXOs sorted or like in a table
Right,
or
right, right. But let me just stop. So again, what I'm trying to explain though is you're confusing concerns. Okay. The shape of the database doesn't know anything about a particular set of addresses. Even you're trying to change the model of the database, right? Like in a way,
yeah.
to where you're trying to make the address essentially like the most important first class citizen or whatever. And my point is it's not really necessary to alter this database from what you have because that's where I'm kind of getting at, and I feel like we're getting really distracted away from actually building the thing. But yeah, so you should not be using this if you don't understand what it's doing. The point was it should work out of the box, and the concept of filtering which addresses you actually store the data for is completely independent from the concept of storing and retrieving that data, right? And this is what we built is I built it so that the database module, you should never put business logic basically in the database module. The database module is designed to store primitives that come from the chain, right? And so we already have addresses covered because addresses aren't actually a first class citizen on our chain. Addresses are something that are a property of something else, right? Like it's either you're registering or you're making a certificate or you're right, like, or it's a UTXO, it's a transaction, it's a vote delegation, it's a something else, right? And address is just the credential that happens to be doing it, right? So it's like credential isn't first class, basically. It's kind of weird, but that's true. Um,
So by adder, I'm filtering out those UTXOs, and then I feed those UTXO to this database. Am I
right.
right? This is the path?
Yeah. I mean, like that would basically be the path is you pre-filter to the data that you want from the
Yes.
full fire hose, right, of ChainSync.
Yeah.
So you have the fire hose of ChainSync. You have a input configuration that says, I want to watch these 8 addresses, right? So now you have your filtering. And then when you go to store, so store is basically your output. So if you're looking at the 3 stages of adder, right? You have your input, you have your filter, and then you have your output. So the database should be attached to the output. It should be in the store at the very end.
Yep. This is the example that you provided for the adder on Demeter.
Yep.
It's the inputs, this is filtering based on the address, and
Yeah.
then
And then the output, you're using the embedded output. Right. And then so in that handle event, right?
which is here.
Yeah. And that's going to be used as something. Well, right now it's just outputting, but like that would be the thing that stores it in the database. Right. Because by the time it gets to this event, it's already been filtered. So you don't have to worry about filtering it at the database layer. You get what I'm saying? Like, so you can leave the database layer generic and just fetch and remove, add and remove UTXOs. Now, there might be other things that you need. Like, I don't know if you need state credentials or anything like that, which, by the way, I just added to Ding or I'm adding to Dingo like right now. But yeah, so I think that the UTXO will work. One thing that is definitely missing though is like a concept of transaction, right? Like if you want just like what were the inputs or the outputs that were actually used in a transaction, right? Like I don't actually have we don't have an easy way to query that in the current configuration where we just have like UTXOs, right? Because we have when they were spent.
So we cannot know that these UTXO are the inputs or the outputs in that transaction.
No,
But
they're always the outputs.
they're always outputs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Unless you wait, sorry, go back up to the chain sync config.
Change C config here.
Yes. Unless you also add the Kupo support that will resolve inputs, it will always be the outputs. If you add the Kupo plugin to ChainSync, then it will resolve. Yeah, there's a with Kupo URL. Yeah. So if you have a Kupo URL, right, then you can also. Oh yeah. Yeah, it needs a string URL, but if you have the Cooper URL, then it will resolve inputs. Hey, there you go. You already got one. Awesome. So that'll make it so now it'll do it on inputs or outputs, and the inputs show up as a separate field. Just so you know, so the resolved inputs it matches on them. It shows up as a resolved inputs field, so you can treat them separately downstream, right? Uh, but yeah.
Uh, so that was the thing that I thought that, okay. Uh, what about the UTXO RPC, Chris? Does that provide the whole transaction, like in the whole its concept, input, output, everything? Or no, I mean that's also is not going to happen or doesn't happen.
It depends. It is the answer. I'm not sure. I'd have to go look at the implementation right now on whether or not it resolves the inputs. I think it's I think
Instead of we get the information from other, the Cardano node and Kupo, we get the information from UTXRPC, filtering them again, putting that in that database. And to be honest, I wanted to mess around with the database to modify it to store more information besides those primitives. Uh, like
right.
more information, not just UTXOs, other information become like it would be becoming a customized database and actually starting afterward starting to remove things from that, like the thing that I don't want or we don't want, like for example, protocol parameters or I don't know, like making it lighter just to be really customized and specific. But
I mean, yeah, you can absolutely do that,
yeah,
and then you're completely forking the database, which is essentially what you've
definitely,
done,
yeah,
which is not at all what I had suggested, but I mean, like that's a completely different thing. However, these are empty tables
yeah.
unless you put data in them, so there's no weight to them existing unless you populate them.
I didn't know about that. I thought that once you create a table, it is still store a place, like a pointer, like a, inode in Linux or something. Like you just point at like, hey, this is a table. Like there is something that points to those. I don't know how much would be the size, but I don't know. Maybe I thought that maybe the performance become better once you have that. I don't know, like let's say the ground table, which tell you the address of the world.
Unused tables aren't going to affect performance. No.
Okay, okay, didn't know. Thank you. So, well, that's actually good. It's removing things and not breaking things. That is really, really hard. Uh, I see. So for or
Now that being said, it looked like your approach to modifying the database was correct, of adding things to the interface.
yeah,
Doors.
actually, I
Yeah.
spend quite a time on that. But still, I don't get an error here. Is that this is the address, as you said, the address now is the kind of a key, and the transaction is the value. It's like something like that. And then in the
Right,
model,
right, right. But that's the
the
Gorm
add,
that's a Gorm transaction. That's a database transaction.
yeah.
That's not a
Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry, so
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah. No, I'm just telling you, like that is not a
yeah, actual,
transaction.
yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
yeah. So this is the struct I added in the model, like the table name is address.
yeah.
Uh, I just again wanted to learn about these how things works, but I think I realized now that I wanted to have a database already filtered and sorted. But what you say is things better. I went to test it out, and then inside the database, well, this was the and I was also wondering that. The Apollo provides some address.
Yeah, we
Still,
have all that.
is it?
We have all that.
Okay,
It's all in Ouroboros.
no problem. Then great. So yeah, that's the current state. The thing is, I wanted to test with first adder and see what's going on, what's happens.
Mhm.
Right now, well, the adder is just the implementation from the. Well, it's just a, you know, typical implementation. I haven't reached to this. I wanted to first have my uh, database ready, the handlers, uh, address, and then, get to text or by address and stuff, all these, uh, like these endpoints, and of course, removing the address from the database. And then starting to feed that via first adder and then UTXO RPC and maybe combining them, like, I don't know, for example, output from adders, input from something, or I don't know, UTX or datums or some other stuff. So yeah, that's the current state. And one thing that I didn't know actually, I'm not sure, Chris, about the loading of the already existing database. I asked this AI that does this database package. Uh, uh, Take care of loading as well. Like if the database exists, here I provided the directory. This is the database. Like this is the Badger one. This is the SQLite one. Doesn't load from that and doesn't change the existing information and kind of starting to like continue from whatever it was there and stored there or no. And the
That
second question,
depends. How are you calling it? How are you creating the database?
well,
Not the directory. How are you creating it? You somewhere are instantiating it.
yeah. So this is
Yeah,
the
database new logger convent. Yes, as long as you are passing it a database dir that is not empty. If you pass it a empty string, it will store it in data in memory. If you pass it any directory whatsoever, it will use that directory. As long as that directory has data in it, it will resume. If that directory does not have data in it, it will start over.
okay, great. And then there was this thing also that does the new one, the new sorry, this function database that new checks that the directory exists, and if it doesn't exist, create ones. I have this function ready for that. Just
You'd have to go look in database. I don't have
uh,
any idea.
okay.
I mean, it's
I didn't find it,
sorry,
so that's just the permissions and the
yeah.
directory.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't do that. I'm pretty sure we might do it somewhere else. But you'd have to look under the SQLite plugin. It's under the database on plugin. Yep, database down right there. Yeah, new.
I need nope, new.
Keep going right there. If the make sure that we can read the data dir and create it if it doesn't exist. So yes, we create the data directory and any we do make dir all also. So we'll create parents and all that. So you didn't need to do that.
Great. Thank you. So simply just remove it. Okay, so yeah, so for that's the current state, and I'm going to continue. But thank you. Just mm, honestly, still understanding and learning about the whole code and how to store it. And that
Yeah,
was the thing. At the Yahtzee store, they figured out all these tables and the information, how to store them, how to, and they just provided some endpoint. And now that's the thing that we need to figure it out. But thank you for this I mean this guidance, especially for database. Just starting everything from scratch would have been really hard and
Yeah,
maybe
I mean the general idea is you never ever should dig into the plugins. If you are a user of the database, you should use the database interface at the very top and only use the top level helpers. So like block, TX, UTXO, that sort of stuff, tip, right? Like that are here, like these. Yeah, blob transaction. Actually, no, not these. These are only for instantiating the database. Once you've done that, yeah, you should be using these, like UTXO right here. So I already have. Scroll down. Keep going. Like we already have right here UTXO by ref. We have UTXO by address. Scroll up. There was a yeah UTXOs by address. Right, and it takes a ledger address. And we already have converters for turning a string into a ledger address in Goroboros. So you can, in fact, it's new address, right, in Goroboros that takes the string and will convert it into a ledger address. So if you've got the ledger address like you would from Adder, you can convert it to the ledger address and go ahead and use it without having to create whole new functions and all that other stuff.
So allow me to find exactly the place. Go. Labs. Yeah. I just want to put that in that node.
Sure. Ledger, common.
Why it came to the
Yeah, you didn't click it. Yeah, there we go. Ledger,
ledger.
common, address.go. I'm like literally, dude, this part's coming off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Just
13
with the,
hours ago, this was just
oh no, I just mainly have done this. So I know this part. Ledger, common, and then under address go, you'll see,
here. Ledger
yeah,
common
yep,
address.
address.
Yeah.
And then the main, one of the first functions you'll see here is just
Address is
right
from.
there, new address from string. And ours also supports base 58 for Byron and everything else. So it does the right one. It also supports whether or not it's testnet or mainnet, et cetera, in the decoding.
That's great. Uh, a very side question. Chris, does it support handshake address or Bitcoin addresses? Kind of.
No,
No.
no.
Yeah.
Goroboros would not support
Uh,
non-Cardano addresses. However, CDNSD does already have handshake addresses besides just to answer that question for you. But for here, yeah. Uh, but yeah. So you can use the new address and you can just pass the BEC32 and that gives you the ledger address. And then you can use that in the get UTXOs by address and it'll return the UTXOs by address already. So all of those functions should already be there, and you should already have the address set pre-filtered because you're adding the filters at adder, which means you'll never get any UTXOs that don't belong to addresses you care about anyway in your database. So your database will be only the UTXOs for the addresses you're watching, right? It's just now you get to use Dingo basically and not have to write all your own stuff. That was the idea. That was the suggestion. Because this is overly complex if you're just going to write your own database. Like if you're wanting it to handle things that are not and adding a bunch of other stuff, I was not aware that was necessarily what you were doing. If that's what you're doing, it does not make sense to go from this. This is overly complex. It has two separate storage engines, all this other sort of stuff that isn't necessary. It was the point was you were going to get it all for free, right? If you're going to just consume it as a library, but if you're going to fork it and modify it, then there's a whole bunch of complexity now that you have to remove. So. Uh, yeah, I would go with one or the other. And if you're going to go with writing your own database, I would not use Badger at all. You won't need it. I
Yeah,
would just
actually,
store
I
the
use the SQLite here. I mean, I'm storing that in SQLite.
right, right,
So,
right,
so,
right.
so,
But I just meant this database module uses two. It
yep.
it uses Badger and SQLite, and it stores all of the blob stuff in Badger instead of SQLite because it's faster. But it's not necessary for an indexer. We did that really because of the node for Dingo, right?
Hmm. Well, I think I should again.
Yeah. We keep
I
going.
think
I mean,
about it.
I was, yeah, I was not trying to completely derail you. I was just trying to show you where we already have all of this stuff in there as far as what it was designed, and this will give you a list back of UTXOs. Now, if you wanted specific transactions, right, like you wanted to
Yeah,
know which transactions things were in,
yeah.
you'd have to fetch them from the UTXO list, right? It's not that hard. Each UTXO has the transaction ID and the output index, right? So you would basically just get the hashes, the transaction IDs. You deduplicate
And
that
yeah,
list.
but just filtering out based on them, and that would be the transaction. But kind of still, I am still trying to figure out the cupo part here for the inputs. and how to get those inputs and outputs.
That's it.
Uh,
That's all you have to do.
yeah, and still, I don't know if we need that, but I don't think we need witnesses, James, right? In our index, we just
I don't
uh,
think you should. You're only trying to index what's inside of the contract, essentially, right?
Yeah, we're really, I mean, processing data and datum and token names into an easily consumable format is the end goal, right? We,
Right, but they're ones that are in the contract. Like you're not tracking it as things leave the contract, right? You're or track the
Mm,
contracts, whatever. Like you're trying to track the state in them.
if any given state
You don't need to
arrives
resolve the
at a
inputs.
validator, that's the information we need. Adrian or Nelson, can you think of any exceptions to that?
Yeah, there are more. For example, we write redeemers because we store some information in the redeemers too. So that would be a transaction info, which doesn't belong in the ledger state, right? That's one. Yeah,
Right.
one of the examples.
Okay.
so in the UTXO, do we get the attached stuff to the UTXO, like all the
We store the entire UTXO
change
block
Right.
UTXO?
as
Oh,
CBOR. So the answer is yes. So like this is get a lot of our design, right, is around the only thing that goes into SQLite is the indexing.
Right. And this is really where we should be spending the most time if possible over the rest of this session and the next ones is
Kind
looking
of
at
like
a
figure it.
specific example of how to take that CBOR and turn it into an API response that is easily consumable, right? The front end developer doesn't want to think about UTXOs. They want to know the relevant data that's in the datum.
Right, right, right.
And so
Now
maybe taking a chance to like do
go
that
through
now
a
that we
workflow.
have, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, now
yeah,
that we
yeah.
have an event,
Yeah.
okay, adder gets us this event, but what are we actually saving about that event?
Right. So the event that you're going to get, right? In this case, scroll up for a second. Yeah.
where here is
Scroll up.
just this is the based on this address. That's
Okay,
it.
so you're just getting transactions from that address. Right. So you're getting transaction events out of Adder. Like that's what you're getting. So in the handle event, you're getting, a transaction well, yeah, a transaction event, right? So you get the context in the event.
Yep.
And so, like, do you want to save, consume UTXOs? Do you want to, right? Like, I mean, it really depends on this is again where it's like, this is the business logic part, right? So I can tell you, like what we already have, but, what goes into this handle event down here is the entirety of your business logic.
So here,
Yes. Right. So I mean, like this can call anything else, it can do whatever, but I mean, like this is the entirety of your business logic, is what happens here. So
When this kind of transaction happens, do this with it. When that kind of transaction happens, do that with it.
yes, exactly. Exactly. So, we already know that they're filtered to this address and that sort of thing, right? So you already have the event, and the event is a adder shaped, right, transaction event. Um, give me a second. I just lost my screen because I was trying to click on something. But anyway, it's an adder shaped transaction event, right?
yep.
And that you can convert, into the other types. By the way, I didn't notice in your config, are you doing with CBOR? Are you including or include CBOR in your in your adder startup? Just scroll up in here.
No, I
Okay.
think it's
Yeah,
blocked.
yeah, yeah. So do the with includes CBOR also.
True.
True. Yeah. So now the transaction events that you're going to have actually have the full CBOR in them. This makes it a lot easier for us to save, right? Because again, if you look at how to like save and set UTXOs, right? Which under the database. So if you look at like database UTXO again,
Database
yep,
UTX.
that guy. And you look, so go at the top. We have like a new UTXO. That's basically how you create a UTXO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right here. But you see, so look at what it takes to create a new UTXO. The transaction hash, but the actual bytes, not the string version of it, right? The input, the slot, which is useful for finding them later, right? For deleted and all that sort of stuff. The payment key, the stake key, and the CBOR, all is bytes. Now, any of those can be, I mean, like they can be empty, right? But I mean, that's what it stores is the payment key, stake key, CBOR, all is bytes, and then it'll commit that to the database and store. Still, the CBOR gets stored to the blob store for later retrieval. So, like if you look at, let's just say UTXOs by address or get UTXOs by address, it's a little further down. Yeah, UTXOs by address here, right? And so what it returns is a list of UTXOs.
Yep.
And so if like we scroll back up, you can see where the UTXOs are defined at the very top. And this looks the same as what it looks like in the database. Yeah, here. Right. So I mean the CBOR gets stored, and yeah, it's not stored in the metadata DB, it's stored in the other DB, but we still list it as a thing. But anyway, like this is what a UTXO looks like, right? So now if we need the UTXO CBOR, we UTXO CBOR. If you want it as a transaction output, even better, right? Like now we're converting back to Goroboros. Scroll down a little bit. Stop. See
Load
decode,
decode.
right? So decode now takes that CBOR that's stored in this UTXO and converts it into a ledger transaction output, a Goroboros ledger transaction output, right? So now all of our normal Goroboros stuff works with it. You can convert it to strings. You can get the redeemers out of it, right? Like you can dot redeemers, parens to get all of them. You can get the governance things out of it by asking for dot proposals, uh, right? So the point is we tried not to put too much into the actual database because we already have everybody in the entire ecosystem already has tools for working with CBOR because we have to,
Yeah.
right? So the point is we don't want to duplicate that too much, and so we try to keep the CBOR as much as possible as our, or in our case, what we do with Dingo is we try to make the Goroboros primitives, right, like ledger transaction output, our main things that we deal with. So we're either dealing with a Goroboros primitive or we're dealing with CBOR. And we try to keep it to only those two things. And CBOR goes in our blob database, and everything else, like we basically convert into the metadata database, the SQLite. I'm just saying, so like that's how this database works. And the way that it works that way again is because we already have all of the like things in Goroboros for stuff, right? Like why duplicate this when we can go into what is this? Jeez, to go into yeah, so go
The
look at
Grover is the
common
transaction.
go look at common transaction output.
Common transaction
Yeah,
output.
yeah, go look at this guy, right?
Address
And we
amount.
have all these functions that we can get out of it. You see what I'm saying? So like if you want the address out of a UTXO, you can just ask for dot address. If you
So
want
is
the
the
amount,
fastest way
that's
to
it.
get Redeemer to operate on the CBOR though? Or is there a built-in for that?
We have
In
the
the transaction. So that would
code.
not be in the transaction
It's not in
output.
the
That's in
Here
the
output.
is
Yeah, where's the
transaction.
witness
transaction? Oh, that's
redeemer.
right. Oh, there's
Yeah.
the
So right now,
transaction witness set. Right.
yeah. So that's in the transaction witness set, but that's actually part of the transaction. So
Right.
let's go
Right.
back. Can we go back to our code? Way back to yeah, close out of Gorboros. I'm gonna because it's in a transaction and we're not getting a transaction. We are at a transaction output. right? Because we're at a UTXO, a single
Yep.
UTXO. So what we are missing is we do need some way to store transactions and store transaction data that is not UTXOs, right? We are
Yep.
definitely missing that. I mean, we have blobs and UTXOs or blocks and UTXOs. So right now, the way that we would get this with what we currently support is you would store the blocks and we would get it out of the block. And of course, that's going to be a little bit inefficient, right? In other words, we would look up the transaction by block, and then we would fetch that block, and then we would decode it out of that block. And that's too much, right? Like it's too many steps. So just to let you guys know, I am working on all currently. In fact, this is a little bit older of a database, I can tell. I've been working on adding the newer primitives into Dingo, which was again why I was kind of suggesting using it as a library, is because I'm just going to keep adding stuff to Dingo, right?
Yep.
So I added account support. So now we're starting to track state credentials essentially. Before I was tracking the registrations and deregistrations, but we weren't actually creating and tracking a stake address. So we're tracking the stake addresses because we'll be able to need to do that to be able to correlate account or individual addresses to the stake credentials, right? We need that lookup table.
Mhm.
Um, I've started tracking DREPs. So there's a DREP table. There'll have to be a transaction table because we'll need to be able to track things that happened like redeemers, right?
Yep.
There needs to be like we need datums, we need redeemers, we need some of these things, and even if it's just references to where to get them for faster lookup, right? We need to have that tracking. They're missing. So one of the things that we can do out of this also is determine things that are missing, and that will help us set priorities in things we can add to Dingo.
Great.
So you need so we just looked and we found that while UTXO is great for telling us what the UTXOs are, you
Yep.
need the redeemers out of the transaction. So we're missing something. So we can get that put in easy enough to get there. But yeah, like if you look at a ledger at transaction instead, common transaction instead of transaction body, you'll see the transaction has the witnesses, which is where we got that transaction witness set that we just saw, right?
Mhm.
Already supporting Twitch version 3 as well. It's
Yeah.
great.
And so just to take it back to like a kind of hands-on and ultimately trivial case, where what we want our indexer to be able to do for an end user is to provide a quick transaction history and not
Right.
like a blockchain transaction history, but really like an accounting one. Hey, for
Like, what
this
did I
treasury, we did these transactions, and this transaction had this fee, and the funds went to this escrow or to this contributor, that kind of thing. The
Right,
most
right.
efficient way to do that is still to operate on the UTXOs that we get from a transaction. Is there any way more efficient than that?
I think in this case, it'll actually be to track transactions themselves.
The transaction body it has a fee. That part's easy. If I wanted
And
to,
everything. So go up to transaction. So transaction has everything that is in transaction body
right.
and everything that's in transaction.
But to get
So
like
inputs and
amounts that
outputs.
went, yeah. But yeah, it's the inputs and output UTXOs that I'm really
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
interested
yeah.
in. And then I operate on those. I grab
Yes,
the fee, of course I want that, and then I account for each UTXO and the algorithm for any given mapping the set of UTXOs for any given transaction is going to be the same for similar transactions.
yes, yes.
So we take those one at a time. Nelson, what are we missing here? Redeemers, ref inputs, withdrawals. We want withdrawals for when we are using a withdrawal script type or why?
Not sure what exactly Nelson is pointing to, but I don't think we need that as we are only using withdraw zero and there's nothing we need to store about that, I guess.
Sure, but you don't necessarily need to store it and store it to you might need it, right? Is the point. The point is if we look at your requirements are you need access to the reference inputs, you need access to right all of the inputs and outputs. You need ref inputs, inputs and outputs. You need withdrawals. That means you need the transaction,
Yeah.
the whole thing, right? Like I mean, you could get away with just the transaction body, but at this point, let's just say transaction
That's
because
fine.
we know transaction is a first class citizen,
Right.
right? Now in adder, again, you do get the entire transaction. I just don't have a way to store the entire transaction currently in the database, but you are already actually getting that in adder, right? If we go and we look at the adder event. Yeah. You go on. It'll be the just let's just get to the adder code anywhere in it. It's fine. To go take a look at.
Okay, let
Yes,
me
just pick one of these. That guy, he's good.
it doesn't why it doesn't let me go to this guy and other. For
Yeah.
example, where
All
API
right. Go to
internal
event.
event.
Yeah.
But
Wait. Why is that? Sorry, I'm trying to scroll it through your thing here. All right. Why are you doing that? Yeah, click that. Not event. Sorry, maybe it's
maybe little bit so me.
Sorry, it's hard trying to read it in that tiny screen. Give me a second. Let me go find where it is. It's a million times easier not looking at it that way. Anyway, I want to try to find the transaction event. I just don't know exactly where it is, and that thing is trying to show it to me where it is. It's under input chain sync. Yeah, input chain sync trans TX. Right. So what we get from adder is a event that has a context and a payload, right? And the context is the transaction context, and the payload is the transaction event. Whenever we're getting a transaction event from adder, right? So
We
yeah,
don't get the redeemer. I don't see the redeemer here. Or
nope, it's
does it
not in
got
there.
the transaction witness? That's why we don't get that.
No, it's just not there. So if we go look at adder, I bet you there is a open issue for it.
Oh,
Let's see. Create base. Let's see. Redeem. Nope. All right. So, new issue. Add redeemers, right? To transaction event.
or transaction witness, kind of. Maybe the whole
What?
package. The transaction witness, the whole package, which cross-run. No?
Okay, go back to Goroboros, and in Goroboros, it's a right, like it's the event. Or sorry, we were just looking. Oh, never mind. I guess you were using that same window. Never mind. Anyway, the point was that we were looking at the transaction type in Goroboros, right?
Yeah.
And in the transaction in Goroboros, it has a redeemers. So let's just add it directly, right, as redeemers to the transaction event. We don't want to change the shapes of all these things and try to make it look like the way that you want it. We want to use them as they are, and you change the shape of them at use, right? Because that makes it easier to so that we're talking the same language, right?
Yeah.
That's basically what I was getting at. So anyway, I'm gonna add this. This is a feature request here. We'll add redeemers transaction event. That one's easy, so we can get that added easy enough. But yeah, it's missing. We because we've not added everything, so it's missing redeemers. We can add that. Easy enough.
Yep. By the way, uh, uh,
And
maybe
in
I
fact, these are
missed on sometime. Other, if you add witnesses, we will get the Plutus scripts as well, right? Out of the like, we will get the whole structure, all of this, or no? Just
yes. If you get the transaction, yes. Sorry, yes. If you get the witnesses currently in
get
Adder,
all of them.
yes.
Okay. What is
Sorry,
Bootstrap?
is witnesses already there? Give me a second. No, we don't have witnesses at all. Okay, yeah. So that's what you want is transaction witnesses.
Yeah,
Okay, then I will
transaction witnesses, which have
add
the redeemers and the Plutus script. Probably
witnesses.
this is the
All right,
it's put
I
in
just
the
updated the ticket.
calculation. It is not the. Okay, thank you.
Anyway, I'll have that done by next week. That's easy. That's super trivial. So,
What is Bootstrap?
hmm?
Bootstrap's witness. I don't know what is it. Do you guys know? Do you know, Chris? Here,
Yeah, it's from
Bootstrap.
Genesis configs.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's Genesis config. I never look into it. Okay, but yes. Okay. And the redeemers are in indexes of value.
Yeah, so they're in the witness set. So all we have to do is make sure that you get the witnesses, and then you'll be able to get the redeemers from there. In other words, you'll use these functions, the Goroboros functions, to get them.
Yep.
Uh, yeah.
The value, and then the value would be the what we want. This is the actual redeemer structure, and the X
Yep.
unit. Well, I mean, we don't I think, but here is the one that we need. Just decoding that. Let me see how does it decode into a structure or something uh, like we have this Pultus encoder in Apollo. Do you suggest to use that, Chris? I mean, imagine we have this redeemer and adder, we got this redeemer. We now want to deserialize it, this CBOR, into an actual type. I mean, readable type, redeemers, datum. Uh, using value. No, here I think we should test that how we can deserialize that. But I think we can use Bluetooth encoder, which is this guy.
I'm
Let
going to
me.
get back to the simple. The answer is CBOR because we don't deserialize to any adder or any Apollo types inside of Goroboros.
Yeah, but I cannot marriage Apollo and Ouroboros here, or no? Can I? Like for
They are
example,
not.
here I have bunch of types. Is it this one? Yeah. Like for example, I have what is this? Say this guy model here. For example, bunch of types. These are all just redeemers, and like this is redeemer, datum, all this structure based on Bluetooth encoder, and then deserializing that seaboard into these types, and then
Yeah,
providing.
CBOR it should always deserialize. Like that's basically the point, right? Is as long as we are passing it back as CBOR, which we are, so you're able to get it out of the Goroboros stuff. And again, we return CBOR. You decode it, you get a value, right? Like that's all CBOR. And so you're only going to get CBOR back. So you can deserialize the CBOR then into these types, and it should deserialize correctly into the exact stuff that you created with Plutus encoder. So yeah, it should deserialize correctly into your types.
That's great. And so Nelson, do we want to store anything else, like a in the database indexer? Like we have the Andamio, like all of it. Regards to assets, regards to something, I just want to, write that down. We want to, like for example, storing how many user, like which wallet has bunch of these addresses or something. Or no, like what
Yeah,
other?
so the two questions here are how, like, what and how do you need to store stuff, and what
Yeah,
and how do you need to retrieve? So,
yes,
like, if you wanted a UTXO and you want to look it up by an asset,
yes.
we don't have a search for that.
Oh,
So
oh,
you see what I'm saying? So like if that's something that you wanted, we don't have a, get UTXO by asset. We have a, get
okay,
UTXO by ref or get UTXO by address because that's all we've needed yet.
let
So
me,
if you do need other things, other queries, then we should look at that and we should add them
okay,
because I do want Dingo's database interface to be generic enough over those primitives, right? That it's the stuff everybody needs. Everybody needs get UTXO by ref. Everybody needs get UTXO by address, right? You know what I mean? So like I want to make sure that we support all of those things. So I have some of those. We've got UTXO by ref. We also have like adding and deleting UTXOs for various reasons, right? So like this UTXOs delete consumed and all that stuff, like delete rolled back. These are for your rollback handling.
if happens.
Yes. So if you want to have rollback handling in your application, then your adder needs to also track rollbacks. And then you would run this UTXOs delete rollback when you get a slot. The nice thing is a rollback event gives you what? A block hash and a slot. So you can just use that to pass it to UTXO's delete rollback, right? And it will automatically take care of doing the right thing in the database. We already wrote it. See what I mean? So now your handle rollback event handler, if you had one, could now just literally call UTXO's delete rolled back slot, right? Easy.
And one question, how often rollbacks happen, Chris? Is it like deterministic that how often it happens or no? We have no idea. Like after 10 blocks,
Oh no,
100,000
no, no! It's completely. I mean, it's chain
random.
reorgs, so it's entirely based off of the your peers. Yeah, so it's not. There's no deterministic way to determine. Yeah, it's definitely non-deterministic. It is, let's say, about as random as it can get.
Mhm. Yeah, okay. I was thinking that if it is really great random, we can maybe use it as a seed for randomization is something. Uh,
No, 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 not
the-
frequent enough to be used as a good seed.
yes, sir. So, what do you think?
Um, so Chris, how um, it seems like you don't have plans for the database package here to uh, support inserting a new table with a custom defined model, right? Because like James said, we still want to store some of our process data, which which is like specific data structure that is defined in the Andamio contracts and is not really nothing to do with Cardano. So I'm thinking like in this database, we are still using a SQLite. There should be
Right.
a way to just define a model ourselves and insert it as a new table besides all of the existing data, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And you can if you call the metadata store interface directly. So go to metadata store. So right up, yeah, right about there. Down. One more. Yeah. And so we still have scroll up to the very top where you see database. We still have like oh, never mind. So you can still run regular Gorm migrations. Sorry, I forgot I removed some of this stuff. So you can run regular Gorm migrations and define your own models and all that sort of stuff. Obviously outside of this, um, having the ability for it to track your own custom models sounds like a good feature request. So yeah, I'm just saying that sounds like a good feature request. To make it more generic.
But do you think that would be like on the plan of the database for Dingo to be more generic, or like I wonder, it shouldn't that be more specific to Dingo, whatever Dingo provides, and if someone wants to go customize things, I mean, sure, it would make life easier for, like, for example, us, but like just I had to go to add all this stuff, but I
So
am
the way that
wondering that.
Dingo, well, no, so the way that Dingo is currently designed is it's designed as to be actually two separate things. It is designed to be generic interfaces that can be configured that is Dingo, so it can be used as a library, and then
Mhm.
it is a opinionated agglomeration of those interfaces into a node. So it's both. Right. So the Dingo binary like package that gets shipped, right, is a specific way that those things are tied together. That is specific to like Cardano and stuff like that. But the goal is that that's not necessarily the case. So you can take the database package, you should be able to use it anywhere. You should be able to use the UTXO RPC package. And right now, the UTXO RPC package directly calls a bunch of stuff to get the responses and that sort of thing. But the idea should be you should be able to use the UTXO RPC package, and it provides all of the server side stuff you need for UTXO RPC, and you basically plug in the actual implementations. All right, and that's again the idea, so that you don't have to duplicate all of these things,
Yeah.
and especially because we are using all these things in different ways. Like we were just talking about, I said, I want you to be able to plug in your own functions as the providers to UTXO RPC. So if you're providing UTXO RPC for Handshake, for example, and you have a Handshake database instance that happens to store Handshake data, like I wanted to be able to do that. So that CDNSD is basically using two Dingo databases, one for Cardano and one for Handshake, and then we're providing the custom tables for the records, right? So even the things that we were just asking about being able to have custom tables in, that's actually within like my thought process anyway, right? So and then I also want to do some unification of Dingo and Adder when it comes to the types and how they work together. So I'm going to add a Dingo event input plugin to Adder and make that so that Adder will listen to Dingo's event bus because it's
Like Coupa URL, something like instead of
no, like instead of input chain sync, you
uh,
have input dingo.
hmm,
And it's a whole new architecture entirely, like a whole new thing. So Dingo already has its own internal event bus, and it already has consumer like publishers and subscribers, right? So
yeah.
I want to make it so that you can we're going to expose Dingo's event bus as a public interface, essentially, as a port in Dingo that you will be able to attach adder to, and it will just be a subscriber to existing Dingo events. So Dingo already has chain sync events. It already has block fetch events. It already does the same kind of like eventing. It's a little bit of an overlap with Adder, but it's designed to do so for its own use. The point is Adder could just tap into those and listen to them. I don't need to chain sync anymore. If something literally tells me, hey, I just chain synced, here's the
Yeah.
event, right? Here's the transaction. Here's the block. Here's the thing that you were looking for. So that's the idea is Adder will feed basically the same thing that ChainSync would, so it'll produce the same event types as ChainSync. And so we've got to refactor some stuff and that sort of thing. Like I got to make some of the ChainSync event data stuff more generic. Like right now, everywhere you're using input chain sync, like transaction event, right? But we don't want that. We want transaction event to be a more generic thing in Adder, right? So that it works whether you're using input chain sync or input Dingo. The filters and the output should all work the same with that. It shouldn't matter what your input is, right? But anyway, that's the idea, is to start trying to like kind of unify these things a little bit so that they work together a little better.
Uh, I just now wonder, I don't know, it's a good question or not. When we can expect to see all these amazing, witchcraft actually
I mean, just follow the issues. We
issues.
follow the repos. We're working on stuff constantly. Yeah, like we just added to Dingo. So we had support for reading immutable DB from Cardano. Yeah, yeah. From in fact, under database, you'll see there's a immutable
Yep.
directory, right? And this immutable directory was actually previously unused, but we wrote it. It's the ability to read the immutable database, the database of a Cardano node. So now we actually hook this up now. So now you can point Dingo, and there's now a load command. So you can say Dingo load and path to a Cardano node database. And it will now start up, load that into Dingo's own database, and then shut down. And then you can start Dingo. So like you can download a Mithril snapshot, extract it to a directory, and then point Dingo at that directory now. And that's how you can load Dingo.
Sorry, would you explain this again?
Yeah, you were too busy scrolling.
No, no, I just heard mithril and just my mind goes to sidechain, sideways.
What?
No, no, I just want the like
Not no,
now I
not
can
midnight.
use
Mithril. Mithril, not midnight. Mithril.
wasn't mithril a solution for parallel chain or something?
Snapshots.
Snapshots out. So
What
yeah,
do
yeah,
you
yeah,
mean is
yeah,
Midgard? No,
yeah.
I think Midgard.
Well, sorry, there are so many,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah. So to snapshot faster, you can
yeah,
use Mithril.
just
Right.
remember like that light node Charles was talking about that they can put it in the mobile phone and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They want to use
it's
Mithril for that, but the idea is that Mithril is it's stake weighted snapshots. And so there's the ability to get the stake weighted snapshot of the current state of the chain, all the blocks, all that sort of stuff, right? All the UTXO set, etc. In Mithril. And so we have the ability to read the block database essentially and process it. So this is just the code specifically for the database. We've integrated it entirely into the ledger and all that stuff. So you won't find any of the good stuff outside of this. This is the ability to read that database. So it's a capability, but the point is there's now a Dingo load command that you can run. So when you have a brand new Dingo, you can run Dingo load and point it at the database. So the point is you can go Mithril, run Mithril client, tell it to download the snapshot for whatever network you want, and tell it where to extract it, and it'll do that. And then you can point Dingo at that location, and Dingo will read that entire thing and load it into its own database and process it, and then it'll be caught up to wherever that snapshot is, and it'll start from there. so you don't have to synchronize from the beginning
Beginning.
of the chain. So it's not like super fast, but it's basically like
It's faster still.
yeah,
It's
it's way
faster.
faster for like
Yeah.
mainnet, but I mean it still takes hours to run, even on mainnet, because it's basically replaying. You got to realize it's replaying the entire chain still, right, from beginning to end, and reprocessing all of it. So it's a ledger replay, right? So you know how like sometimes when a node crashes and it has to do a
Yeah.
ledger replay and it takes forever. It's
Yeah.
like one of those speed wise, but it's still way faster than synchronizing the chain and downloading all of it and processing it individually in that manner, right? Because that way you're doing it block by block, right? Whereas this, you're doing big chunks, and the download is faster. You download it all at once, right? So it's yeah, it's a much faster process. We've been testing it mostly on preview, so it doesn't make nearly as much of a difference, but it should be pretty significant on mainnet.
And any tips for making the adder faster, like before the chain sync? It just takes kind of forever. Every time we are like just start from zero.
Yeah, I mean, don't start from zero, right?
Uh,
Start
well,
from
yeah, there's a block. I have to find that block number and say that start from that block number. Yeah, I
yes.
was thinking that how can I like getting that block, the latest block somewhere, storing that somewhere, and then feeding that while when I run the adder. So,
Well, I mean, the question is how much history do you actually need to be able to create your data?
well, if I got my history already inside this database, whether it's SQL or Badger, I mean that the whole UTXO, I just can be sure that they are there, so I can start from wherever this binary or this program stopped. Let's start from that. So it's kind of storing it's like the latest UTXO was added to the database. There is a block
Yeah, so that's what the
number, and
status.
that would be the
So that's
initial
where
step.
in your status update func, right? You're with status update func, and you've got an update status. That should be storing it somewhere in the database, right?
Here.
Yes. So now I can already tell you what I would use in this case because you're using my database. We have this thing called commit timestamp. And commit timestamp, you'll see there. Yeah, you'll see a commit timestamp right there. We use it in Dingo. Yeah, keep going down a little bit. Keep going down.
Okay.
So there's just a couple commit timestamp things that it has that the database has, right? So the database has the ability to check these timestamps, and we use it for synchronization between the two, right? So when we write to the blobs in the metadata, it synchronizes them and keeps them in check. So the point is you could update this in your update function. You would run the update commit timestamp with your timestamp.
And then getting that time step back to adder to start it again here.
No.
No?
That it just will take care of it automatically.
Oh,
If you're persisting data,
yeah, which I have, for example, and
right, right,
looking.
right. If you're persisting data, the point is you want to reload from that point. So
Yeah.
you're with intersect tip, like you obviously don't want to do that, right? But like, I guess an easier way to look at this is go look at how it's done in like CD and SD, where we're already storing and retrieving. So we don't refetch from the beginning of time. You refetch from the last place that you were at. That's going to be the best place to look at how Adder is doing it with some persistence. And there we're just storing it in Badger, but yeah. All right, so let's see.
CNSD, CDNSD here. uh, did I click it? So I'm going to, I mean, we are about to, like the end of the session. Let me put this link in the,
And yeah, before I forget, because I was just chatting at Matt here. Welcome, by the way. We're not going to have this meeting next week. So we'll be back in 2 weeks for anybody watching the calendar. Gimbalabs is not hosting any meetings because a lot of people are going to Builderfest.
yep.
Okay, awesome. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for hosting this. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate. Uh, and I will look into the
It's probably all going to be under internal indexer here.
journal indexer.
Yep. And here you can see also where like we're tracking our datum, just in case anyone was interested.
By the way, for Handshake, we might need to add, here I see the datum and indexer. We might need redeemers as well, like for project, like,
Right.
if CDNSD needs to provide something, because we want to have some, I think the hash of those Handshake token would be inside the redeemers. So yeah, anyway, we'll talk about that later. But again, thank you everyone. Thank you for being here and for listening. If you have any question and if you are got excited by these tools and these codes to start your project, feel free to not only come to the future session and talk about your projects, but we have a dedicated channel in your Discord to talk about all things Go. So yeah, if no one have any more question or something, just yeah, thank you very much.
That was fun. Thanks, guys. No, I got really excited today, and thanks for jumping into the details. That felt productive.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you. Have
Talk
a
soon,
great
y'all.
day and night. Talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
guys.
Take care.
Have a good one.